Hello, everyone. It is 5 o'clock on the dot. It is Wednesday, and you already know what that means. It is another episode of Speak Your Soul. I am your host, Shantae. I am so glad to be here with you guys today. I know I took a week off, just kind of my own personal private time to myself, so I can just kind of relax, relate, release. But I'm so glad that you guys are checking in today. Today is episode 18 of Speak Your Soul. So we just keep moving this thing right on along. And so I appreciate you guys for joining in and tuning in every week on Wednesday at 5 o'clock for another episode of Speak Your Soul. So to try to just be transparent, got a little complacent, got a little tired, and so I decided to kind of take a break. But I am back and in full effect, and I'm happy to be with you guys here today. I think that's going around a lot in the last 2 or 3 months, just people kind of getting burned out and just kind of needing to self-reflect and take some time for themselves. So that was kind of last week. Just decided to take a little me time to self-reflect, to just kind of take care of me and kind of do what I need to do, especially in this the day and age, in this day and time, to really just take care of myself and to really make sure that I'm getting enough rest, make sure that I'm eating right, and I'm not overworking myself and trying to come up with things constantly. But with that being said, we're here. Episode 18, Speak Your Soul. So just want to quickly tell you guys one of the things that just a pet peeve of mine, just to start the show off. With everything that's going on in the world, I know it's kind of a cliche, that statement's been said over and over again, but just with everything that's been said and what's going out there in the media right now, to me, and I'm just going to be honest with you, it just seems like a lot of distractions keeping us engaged in all these other different things versus what's actually going on in the world right now. Yeah, we get so hyped up on celebrities and their life and what they got going on. I mean, it's a good break away from reality, but I need you guys to understand, these celebrities need help just like we do. These celebrities are going through it just like we do because they're human, right? And so just given the fact of, everything that's happened, some people have asked me to speak about Jada and Will. And to be honest with you, I have absolutely no desire on speaking on them because at the end of the day, they're still human. They're still human beings. They go through issues and problems, and they put their skirt on or their pants on one pant leg at a time. So it's crazy to me to get caught up in everything that they're going through, their struggles, their downfalls. And so I really don't even talk about it anymore. I mean, that's their own lives, that's their own perspective. I know I've talked about constantly on this show so many people that are right now really going through mental health issues, and how we really never know what somebody is really going through until it happens to them. And so just want to really quickly send my prayers and thoughts out to Tamar Braxton for what happened to her this week. It's unfortunate, but once again, that goes back to, we're all human, right? People put celebrities on a pedestal and think that they don't have issues and problems just like everybody else, and they do. Everyone is human. We're not above it. So, the same thing that you're thinking about on a daily basis in regards to your family, your children, all that kind of stuff, they're thinking that they're going through those same trials and tribulations too. But I think for us, we get so caught in the sensationalist of it all during the time when it's hot. We're so quick to pick up on that and take that and run with it versus, understanding that, hey, these are everyday human beings that still, have to get up every day and take care of their families and do whatever. And so, like I said, it's sensationalism at best, but I can't get caught up in that. I can't report that stuff. At one point, it was my business. I got paid to do that type of stuff. If anybody can go way back in the day, I used to be wanted to be like Gossip to Go with Flo. For those from Dallas, for K104, I wanted to be like Gossip to Go with Flo. I made a very good living knowing and dishing the dirt on all the celebrities and rappers and all that kind of stuff. And then at some point in time, I had to take a look at myself and reevaluate my own life. Like, what am I doing? These people are human. They have problems. They make mistakes, and so do I. And it takes you making several mistakes in your life for you to understand that those people are human too, just like you. And so I don't, for those that are waiting for me, I've had people jump in my questionnaire box on Instagram and on Facebook. Man, when you going to talk about Will and Jada? We want to hear about that. Or, when you going to talk about some of these other celebrities and what they got going on as far as their relationships? And like I said, I can't speak for them. I can't speak on them. All I can do is speak on what I know to be true. And so for me, it's just, it's not really worth the 2 cents for me to chime in, to put myself out there and make myself judge and executioner on somebody else's life. But what I can talk about is every Tuesday, like clockwork, we do a Speak Your Soul poll or question of the week, where we come up with a topic and you guys respond on what we're going to be talking about as far as on the next episode of Speak Your Soul. And in true Speak Your Soul fashion, you guys have come out in droves with your responses to this week's question. So I want to jump into this one because we've got a lot of responses on here that I kind of want to get to, because it's a lot of interesting stuff. Now, notice I entitled this week's episode, What You Won't Do for Love. And so I figured that's a apropos title, because this week's topic was, what's something you tolerated in a relationship that you will never tolerate again? So literally it's what you won't do what you won't do for love so anymore. So you've done something in these relationships, you've made something acceptable, you've taken something that at this point in your life you're saying, no, I would never do it again. But it had to start with something. So a lot of people chimed in, and there was some very shocking, interesting, but eye-opening comments that were made in here, and some people really were vulnerable about some things that have happened in their previous relationships. And I applaud them, because a lot of times we're afraid, or we don't want to speak up on the things that have happened in previous relationships that have been detrimental to us, that have been a torment to us, something that we don't want to relive as far as in the past is concerned. So I applaud the people that were able to be honest and upfront about what has happened in their previous relationships to get them to this point now. And they're putting a hard stop on, if this was to happen again, if I see the same pattern, the same thing happen again, I would not do it. And so with this topic in particular, I know, once again, anything I speak on Speak Your Soul, I have to put myself and be able to put myself on the hot seat as well. I can't just ask you guys to chime in and say what you have to say on this. I want to get genuine feedback. It's a conversation had between adults. So this particular topic was a true sign of some adults that were able to have a conversation. And when you look at the dialogue, people were posting their, like I said, their most intricate details, but people were also sharing things about themselves, like, how can I get better? How can I do better? What books can I read? What can I, how can I avoid some of the things that have happened to me in relationships in the past? How do I break these certain cycles? Because I tell you, a lot of times when you're targeted to fall in love with the same type of people. And sometimes it's not a cycle that needs to be broken as far as the type of what you're attracted to. Sometimes the cycle has to be broken within yourself. Sometimes it's what you tolerate, what you're willing to do, what you're willing to accept yourself. and not having the self-esteem and the confidence for you to be able to tell someone, no, I will not accept this. I will not do this. Hey, I'm going to put my hand up. I am that person. I've been in relationships where I let things just continue to keep going and going and going. And a lot of times I wanted to blame the other person in the relationship, but a lot of times I had to sit back and reflect and look on myself and say, you know what? Maybe it is me. Maybe it is something that I'm doing that's, that's making this, or that's attracting the same type of person over and over again. So I want to dig into some of these comments because I think they're very interesting. I had literally 94 comments, and like I said, some of these were conversations going back and forth with some of the people, but like I said, everybody's voice deserves to be heard. And on Speak Your Soul, I absolutely value everybody's opinions, what they have to say. I never turn anybody away. I never, unless you say something funny, I never laugh at what people have to say in their opinions. So all of this is good feedback to pass on to other people that may be going through the same situation. And that's what I get from doing these questionnaires every week. People sharing, adults having adult conversations and sharing and giving advice to each other. That's what I hope to give to the people when I do these posts and talk about this stuff every week. It's like therapy in a way. So let's get into it. So to be honest with you, let's start with the one that the most comments were said with this one particular topic, and that was abuse of any kind, whether that be verbal, physical, mental. So a lot of people chimed in that is something that they have tolerated in relationships before, that they will not tolerate in the future. And that's kind of sad to me, to know that so many people, male and female, have been in relationships with people where they've been mentally, verbally, physically abused, and they tolerated it. They tolerated it. And so after going through these stints in these relationships, now that they've gone through it and they've survived it and they've gotten past it, now we're dealing with, okay, the aftermath of, no, I won't tolerate that again. But the fact that you had to endure verbal, physical, mental, and all that any type of abuse in a relationship is just astounding to me, that you would even have to endure those types of relationships. So it's amazing to me. It saddens me that people have tolerated or continue to tolerate those type of relationships where you have a male or female that's verbally or physically abusing you. And now, thank God, you're saying that that's something that you won't tolerate again, but that's a hard stop for me. I thank God, praise God, I've never had any physical abuse in a relationship, but I've had verbal abuse in a relationship. The yelling, the screaming, the belittling, the berating. And what's the sad thing about it is people that take advantage of knowing that you have self-esteem issues pick you apart. They pry on something about you. They pick out your how you feel about yourself, your insecurities, and they basically just fire them back at you in the form of a bomb. And so if you already have insecurities about whether, how you weigh, how you look, verbal abuse is the number one thing that person can use against you, because they know it's going to get you down to the bone. It's really going to be so abusive, and you're going to think it's warranted, and you're going to think that it's something that's, that they should be doing, and it's never okay. Let's just go ahead and put it out there. It should never be tolerated, and it's never okay, coming from a man or from a female. So that one was probably the most repetitive answer or response to the Speak Your Soul poll. So many people said that they have tolerated verbal, mental, physical, any abuse of any kind, that they have tolerated that in these relationships. And now it's something at this point that they won't tolerate anymore. Emotional abuse is the worst because it's not always detected early enough before you're really invested. Exactly. And so, yes, you emotional abuse is another big one. And you're hanging on to that person. You want to understand that person. You want to be with them. And so you're taking it. You're taking that emotional abuse. You're taking it. You're taking it. You're taking it. And by the time you're so vested, like she said, my sister said, vested into the relationship, it's almost too late. But you have to hit a breaking point. You have to get to a point where enough is enough. You can't take it anymore. And so that one, like I said, I was a bit shocked at how many people stated that they take verbal and physical abuse and emotional abuse or abuse of any kind in their relationships. And now all of a sudden that, they've gotten out of that relationship. Now that's something that they won't tolerate anymore. But I hope for anybody out there that's listening to this episode of Speak Your Soul, it's a hard stop. Emotional, physical abuse. Hey, Dr. Carolyn, emotional abuse, physical abuse, any abuse of any kind should not be tolerated. I don't care who you are. It is just not tolerated. I wouldn't even get past the first time around. So you have to understand who you are, understand who what you're worth, to not deal with it the first time around, so you don't become a statistic and say, oh, I won't let that happen to me again. Understand patterns and understand who you are, and hope and make sure that it doesn't happen to you again. Because if someone was able to do that to you once, then 9 times out of 10 that there's something about you that they're able to pick apart. So understand what abuse is, what form of abuse it is, and stop instantly. Hey, Robert, what's going on? So along with the verbal abuse, there were a lot of more, definitely a lot more comments here. Like I said, I'm just going to kind of skim through. Lying, of course, was a big one. We had a lot of people that talked about relationships where he or she in the relationship did a lot of lying. Of course, cheating, of course, is a big one, which is another one to me that once the person cheats, I mean, it's pretty much over with at that point. But we have people that are used to taking those people back time and time again, letting them get away with these offenses, and then still keeping them keeping them still in these relationships. But you have to understand you're worth more than that. You're worth more than these offenses against you. And you have to see that within yourself. You can't expect other people to see your value that you can't see in yourself. When I say that time and time again, for those that follow my Speak Your Soul on IG, I'm the biggest self-care person, self-love person you'll ever, one of the biggest ones you'll ever meet. And so it all starts with you. So when you love you enough, you don't tolerate emotional and physical abuse or abuse of any kind. You don't tolerate somebody belittling you and saying mean and evil things to you. You don't tolerate somebody cheating on you. You just don't do it. And so it all starts with you and what you're able to go through. So like I said, I'm just going to keep going through some of these. Someone said insecurities. They don't want to date or be with someone that has constant insecurities, man or female. So that was another one that came. Why? For all of these reasons is why I choose to be alone. Now that's not at all. There are so many different ones, as you can see. Like I said, there are 94 responses. Like I said, of people going back and forth. And yeah, you can choose to be alone, but some of these have happened to me, and still I still choose not to give up on relationships. I see value in it, but the biggest thing is seeing more of a value in yourself. Before you bring yourself or take yourself into a relationship, make sure that you're 100% covered. Make sure that you're taken care of. Make sure you're strong enough to handle it before you go into these relationships, so that way you're not resentful, or you don't let these things happen. Or if you see it, you're able to say, no, I'm not going to tolerate this, and get out of it right away. So another one, once again, poor communication. Poor communication was a big one on here. So a lot of relationships have taken place and have broken apart because there was poor communication between the two parties, whether it was the man or the female. And that was another big one on here, lack of communication or poor communication. And it's something that they won't tolerate in in and I know that's right. You said I agree with the doctor. She said, but you have to understand, with lack of communication, you have to understand, yes, there are going to be times where there is lack of communication, but it's how you guys rebound. It's how you guys bounce back from, and set each other down and talk about when these things are starting to happen. If you guys can't communicate at all, then maybe you guys don't need to be together. That's that poor communication that can't be met on or compromised on any level. Then at that point you're not, there's no communication at all whatsoever, let alone poor communication. Now this one from my Masonic brother was a really interesting one that caused a bunch of guys to respond. So he said masculine characteristics and mentally from a woman, and mentality from a woman. So what I gather from this particular statement is that a woman basically that's taking the role or acting as though she's a man. And so that one's kind of scary for me, because I would hate to get in a relationship with a guy and have a man's mentality or have this masculinity about me to where, it's turning the guy completely off. And so in this particular instance, they're going back and forth and they're talking about that. So obviously this is something that's happened in previous relationship. Guys, if you're on here, if you've ever had an issue where you've gotten kind of a masculine type of a woman with masculine characteristics, and her mentality was that of a guy, please let me know. So because I've never really experienced or heard anyone really talk about being in a relationship, a man being in a relationship with a woman with a man's mentality or a masculine mentality. But that did cause quite of a stir. Like I said, emotional neglect, that was a big one. Like I said, verbal abuse, allowing myself to get caught up in her that I forgot about me. Wow. You want to talk about, I said, amen, brother, amen. A lot of times, and this is somebody being honest with themselves and being able to self-reflect in this moment and say, hey, in this relationship somewhere, I lost me. I was so caught up in my partner and the wins and celebrating them and putting them on a pedestal to where I forgot all about me. And I had to once again put myself on the hot seat, because I've been in relationships like that where I put my partner on a pedestal and wouldn't do anything for myself. I'm talking about wouldn't even go to get my nails done or do like basic girly girl stuff. And then after a while, when that person starts to see that you're neglecting yourself and letting yourself be neglected, well, then they don't want anything to do with you, because you've let yourself go, because you've spent all your energy, your time, and your efforts on boosting them up and making them feel superior and making them feel like they're the king or the queen on the throne. But what about you? You've completely left yourself out in this scenario. So this one was a huge one, and kudos for this person, like I said, for being transparent and saying, hey, yeah, in my relationship, what I can't tolerate again is losing myself in a relationship. So that's huge. Like I said, I appreciate so many of these comments. Me giving more effort in a relationship, and with this comes all of the things. So yeah, giving more effort is definitely a big one. We've all been in relationships where one partner seems like they're giving more of an effort than the other. Like I said, once again, putting myself out there, that's in the same scenario, in the same vein. Some of these are kind of partnered together. Some of these different ones are partnered together in regards to, they run neck and neck. So definitely, if you have somebody that's, when you're caught up in somebody else, you're also probably going to deal with, you giving more of an effort than the other person. So you just have to be aware and look for the signs when this stuff is starting to happen, and really, really be able to have an honest, an honest conversation with yourself. What am I doing? Am I doing what's best for me? Am I really taking care of me, or am I letting someone run this relationship for me? So a lot of times, you have to take a step back and look at yourself, and it's like, okay, what am I doing? Laziness. Okay, so this was just somebody just threw out laziness is something that they won't tolerate again in another relationship. And like I said, the title of this is What We Won't Do for Love. So all of these things people have tolerated in relationships in the past, but now it's just like there's a hard stop on this. We can't do it again. So men run on empty when we're not poured into. We all have a lifeline, and it keeps us going. It's all about how we're being fed and feeding the relationship. Exactly. Darylyn, you always write some of the most insightful things on these posts. So thank you, sir, Mr. Brown, for all of the comments that you put on, being very transparent on these posts. And people seem to empathize with you and the comments that you make on Speak Your Soul. So thank you so much from a male's point of view for really, really, speaking your soul. So thank you so much for everything that you've given to Speak Your Soul. So I truly agree in that. Men do run on empty too, when they're not poured into. So a lot of times if, that woman is not encouraging, they're not supportive, and that man is, there's nothing, you're not breathing life into that relationship, because you're not breathing life into him. And so a lot of times they get tired, they get frustrated, just like women do in those relationships. And then that's pretty much the end of that relationship. It's all about, like you said, how that relationship is being fed. And if you're not helping each other, if you're not giving back to each other in some form or fashion, then the relationship's just going to end. It's just going to come to an abrupt end. So this was another one that caught my attention that I had to go ahead and second. Being his second choice, never again. So I don't know how many of you out there have been in relationships where the person is quote unquote settling for you. You weren't their first choice. They wanted someone else and they settled for you. So once again, like I said, I can't sit up here and talk about this stuff if I haven't experienced some of this stuff myself. And yes, I have experienced the second choice. Basically, they love someone and they couldn't have that person. So here you come along and all of a sudden it's just like, oh, okay, I'll take you. You seem to do the right things and say the right things. And so they basically make themselves kind of take you on. And that's ouch. Exactly, Valencia, ouch. That's so hurtful, because knowing that you're someone's second choice and not their first, and still deciding to stay in that relationship is so toxic, because they'll always make comments, they'll always make statements, they'll always treat you as though you're a second-class citizen in your own relationship. And that leads to the verbal, the mental, the emotional abuse that you suffer in those relationships. Like I said, some of these things go hand in hand. Some of these things we won't tolerate anymore, or multiple things are happening, just not the one, multiple things. Verbal abuse, being someone's second choice, multiple things are happening in these relationships that we're tolerating. And then now we're saying, okay, we won't tolerate this again. But what made us tolerate it to begin with? So hence the name of this, what we won't do for love. And it looks like with all of these comments, we've done a lot for love. We've done a lot to sustain these relationships, even though these relationships weren't the best. Some of these were damn near toxic, but yet we stayed in these relationships and we tolerated a lot of stuff for the idea of being in love or loving someone else. But the biggest thing that I can tell you is that the only thing that you can worry about in these relationships is loving yourself enough. And that will, trust me, loving yourself enough will make you break some of these stigmas so that you won't tolerate this. And so you don't have to say, oh, I won't do that ever again. I won't tolerate that again. Knowing your worth and knowing your value, of course you'll never do that. Period. Because you won't accept anything from anyone. So, meanness, smoking. Smoking was a big one. A lot of people didn't like smokers and they tolerated smoking in a relationship. If you don't want to compromise on that, I mean, then that's something you shouldn't tolerate. That's a no for you. But you have to be strong in your own convictions to tell that person no. Okay, I don't want to be in a relationship with someone that smokes, but we tolerate that stuff, and then we get angry at that person for decisions that we made, which is totally unfair. If you don't want to deal with smoking, period, you don't want to deal with it. But what you won't do for love, you tolerate everything, including things that you know you would never do. So be first, best to self. Otherwise, my reciprocation is a reflection of self. Exactly. So be good to yourself. Treat yourself good, and that way, you can't worry about what somebody else is doing. So like I said, these comments went above and beyond. Like I said, being second was a big one. So, as a matter of fact, since he's on here, Darylyn did put emotional neglect and lack of words affirmation of any type of encouragement. Some women forget that one of the worst things that they can do is make a man feel like he's less than. I refuse to put up with that nonsense again, period. And add to that, emotional terrorists, and this is when Tony chimed in, if Tony's on here, emotional terrorists and self-centered people. So we've got a lot of guys out there that have really been hurt emotionally in their previous relationships. And a lot of it stems from the woman not encouraging, not supporting, not, just kind of draining the guys in this relationship. They are doing everything, and meanwhile the woman is just taking. That happens out there. That is a reality in these relationships. I don't want us to say that women are always the victims of these type of relationships. There are men that are not getting, emotionally the support that they need from women. And so that's happening. And so that was a big common theme that some of the guys just kind of talked about. It was a reoccurring theme. If I can't be number one, then no bueno. I hear you, Valencia. I've always been too conceited to be number two. Exactly. But it's all what you tolerate, right, Valencia? It's what you tolerate. You know what your self-worth is. And knowing who you are as a person and having your own self-love and your own self-appreciation, you know what you will and will not tolerate from the beginning. But what we won't do for love is the theme. And it just keeps us going in these relationships, tolerating some of the worst things that you could possibly tolerate in these relationships. It just keeps us, it propels us, because we seek this idea of love. We want this love, and the ultimate goal is to be married, but at what cost? At absolutely what cost? So being supportive is a must for both parties in a relationship. I absolutely agree. And so when men posted on here that they've been in a lot of relationships that both parties were not supportive in that, it's really eye-opening. And so that's why I said I love these conversations that we have on Facebook. A lot of things get uncovered. A lot of people then become a support system of my Speak Soul family. So it was beautiful to see people recommending books and all types of things for people to read and to really get a better understanding and a better grasp on this. But what we won't do, for love, in the pursuit of love, we tolerate, neglect, we tolerate abuse, we tolerate so many different things. And like I said, the list goes on and on and on. Gaslighting, verbal abuse, disrespectful kids. That was another one that came up, which was kind of interesting to me. So relationships or kids from a previous relationship, and now you're coming in, trying to be a part of this person's life, and their kids are being rude or disrespectful, and you're seeing how that relationship is between them, and then they're being disrespectful to you, and you know that that's something that you don't normally tolerate, but you're willing to do that for the sake of this relationship. What you won't do for this relationship, you'll do anything, and as you can see. But now hopefully the idea is that you won't tolerate this stuff again, but it gets worse. So not getting needs met, so that can go in multiple different ways. Not getting needs met, that could be sexually, that could be emotionally. So once again, things that you tolerated in a relationship, what you won't do for love, in the pursuit of love, you'll do anything. Being ignored, I found that to be, a huge one. How in the world could you be ignored in a relationship? Well, that's easy. That goes back to, what you're willing to tolerate personally on yourself. For me, that's a big non-tolerate. I can't, I said that I've been in a relationship where I don't think I truly had a voice in the matter, and that my voice wasn't being heard. So that's the same thing almost as being ignored in a relationship. That's not a relationship. That's a one-ship. That's a you and these two people are just claiming that you are in a relationship, but not really. So that's another big one. So that was a big one, being ignored. But inconsistencies, that was another big one on this list. A lot of people said inconsistency. And so when you have somebody that you're with in a relationship and they're constantly inconsistent, they're going back and forth, normally you tend to try to stay in those relationships a little bit longer because you want to see it through to the end. You see a little bit of glimmer or the light at the end of the tunnel, and you want to keep going. You want to see where this relationship is going to go. You want to see if it's going to pick up, if it's going to, turn into something. And then all of a sudden, just there's nothing. But then all of a sudden, later on down the line, it's picked back up again. And now everything is great. Everything is booming. Everything looks wonderful, only for it to go downhill again. So when you have that kind of roller coaster ride, that inconsistency, yeah, that's something that you tolerated. Because once again, what you won't do for love, you'll do a little bit of everything, but that doesn't mean that it's the best situation for you. So you always have to think about these relationships, these toxic, or these, these things that you tolerated. Now you're saying you won't do it again, but in the moment, you have to be conscious and aware to understand you shouldn't do them at all. These are things if these things matter to you the most, and you love yourself enough, you would never tolerate them. Lies, of course, that's a big one. You tolerate lies in a relationship because you want to give that person the benefit of the doubt. And once again, you love them. You want to see where this is going. You don't want to think that you don't believe in the person. But yeah, you can get caught up in a vicious web of somebody's lies. And so, yeah, that's something you don't want to tolerate going forward. You don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that's going to constantly lie to you, but we take it because we, quote unquote, we love that person, and it's what we won't do for love. A disrespectful mouth on a pretty face. That one's pretty much self-explanatory. So somebody that's being very disrespectful to them, talking to them crazy, no matter how beautiful you are. Because trust me, if you can talk like that, and you can talk crazy and be disrespectful something, those looks, that beauty goes right out the window for me. I don't care how handsome you are. I don't care how fine you are. That goes out the window if you're talking crazy to me or being real disrespectful. I can't, that's why I don't really get caught up in looks as much as I used to, probably when I was younger. You have to be able to stimulate. We have to be able to have a conversation. We have to have a meeting of the minds. We have to be able to talk and communicate. So that's a huge thing for me. Being unappreciated. Wow. So being in a relationship, not being appreciated, especially for the things that you do or the person that you are, Men and women struggle with that alike in relationships. So, like I said, it's not one-sided. It's not just about one person, or it's not just about all women or all men. It happens to both of us. We get in these relationships, we feel unappreciated. No, we feel like everything we're doing is a miss, that nobody really cares about the things that we do or what we're able to bring to the table, but we tolerate it. Once again, what we won't do for love. And so there's a lot of things on this list. We can go financial immaturity, which I thought was just a very beautiful way of saying not taking care of their finances, not taking care of their money. And so when you get with somebody and they don't understand what taking care of themselves looks like, let alone what taking care of a group or a couple looks like, it's going to be a downhill battle from the beginning. Because if you're good with your finances and that person isn't, and they're not intuitive enough to ask you to help or for help, then yeah, their relationship's going to go downhill, because once again, it goes back to poor communicating in the relationship. So once again, so many different comments. Lack of ambition was another one. Like I said, smoking is on here a lot. Then we get into impotence. So not the ability of not really having sexual relations in a relationship. And yeah, that that's on the partner, that's on you, because if that's something that can be helped and you truly love that person, then you can get through that. But if that's something that's a hard no for you, don't tolerate it, but we do that, because we want to see the best in this relationship. We don't want it to come to an end. And sometimes we're holding on people. Sometimes we're holding on to a relationship and not the person. Hello. Amen. Can I get an amen from the peanut gallery? We're holding on to a relationship, but we're not holding on to the person that we're with. We would rather deal with what we're dealing with, take whatever is coming in, all of this. We'd rather take all of this for the sake of just saying, hey, but I'm in a relationship. Well, that's not bragging rights, because the person that you're with is not putting any effort, and you're having to tolerate this relationship. I believe it's important to set standards in the beginning of what is expected rather than tolerated. The word tolerate to me means you're willing to put aside your beliefs, standards, just to be in a relationship, right? Toxicity can only bloom when we are willing to tolerate. Exactly. I think ideology of what love truly means is so misguided. I believe in everything that you just said. And so the biggest thing for me is, the reason I'm using the word tolerate is because that's how the phrase of this particular topic was phrased. They used tolerate a lot, but it truly does mean what you're willing to put aside as far as your beliefs and your standards. So your standards, you're lowering them, even though they're your standards, to be in this relationship, to be in love, to be with someone that potentially you don't need to be with. Because down the road, whether it's now at the very beginning or whether it's towards the end, that's still something that you're tolerating versus, saying this is what I expect to happen in this relationship. So good one, Valencia. Lying, cheating, let's see, being chronically excuses, jealousy, insecurities, being taken for granted. That's a big one. False sense of intelligence, narcissism was a big one on here. So we've had a lot of relationships where we've dealt with a lot of narcissism in there. Like I said, abuse, lying, begging for attention. Wow, that was a big one. A lot of being taken for granted. So you can just see a lot of these relationships. That's another big one. A lot of people are getting taken for granted in these relationships. Who they are, what they bring to the table, what they do, what they've sacrificed. If you're a mother, the time that you spend taking care of the kids, all that stuff being taken for granted. But now you're telling yourself, now, after all of the experience that you've had in previous relationships where you tolerated these things, now you're saying, I'm done. No more. I will not tolerate this. I've done this before. I've dealt with these particular situations. I won't do it anymore. And it's, what we won't do. Yes, narcissism is huge. That is a big one. A lot of times, we pass that off for something else. But when you're with somebody and they're narcissistic, it's hard to really get a gander on that person, and their relationships all over the place. So that is a big one. Sexual expectations is also another big one that you tolerate. What that person is willing to do or not willing to do sexually in a relationship is also a big make or break for a lot of people that they've commented in the relationship. And so in the future, going forward, just given the experience of what's happened to them in other relationships, they're like, no, I'm not going to put up with what you telling me. I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do that, which is fine, but we tolerated it. So the end result in this is, why do we tolerate it in the beginning? What makes us put all of our beliefs and our standards to the side and accept these things time and time again in these relationships, to the point to where we're like, no more. I'm not doing this. There is something that's in us that makes us accept or take the emotional abuse, the verbal abuse, the lack of communication, the narcissism, and all of these things that are warning signs to you. Something is making you deal with this. Something is potentially telling you inside, I can get through this. I can get past this for the sake of being in this relationship with this person. Like I said, that's twofold. You either put up with these things because you're more enamored with being in a relationship versus claiming that person and all of the things that they're doing. You just would rather go on Facebook and say, hey, Facebook, I'm in a relationship. Yeah, this person is lying and cheating and stealing and doing all these things, but I'm in a relationship. Or there's always going to be a part of us that really is seeking, that wants to seek and have and to be loved. And for that, you're willing to bend your standards, your beliefs, the things that you want, the things you deserve, for the sake of being in a relationship and being in love or being married. But as I always state, that's something that goes back to you. That's something that comes within you. That love starts with you. So if you don't have it for yourself, then you can't expect that relationship to be what you want it to be. It all starts with you, because that person is going to keep verbally abusing you if you don't love yourself. So there's so many different things. Like I said, kudos to everyone that chimed in and basically created this whole entire episode. Tolerance can even be learned from past seeing relationships from parents. Girl, Valencia, you done went down to the bottom of the well. That is true. A lot of things that you learn to tolerate or deal with, standards, set or beliefs tossed, do come from what you've seen from previous relationships. Could be your parents, could be grandparents, could be uncles, aunts, whatever. But if you've seen them kind of just dealing with things just for the sake of being in a relationship and just for the sake of being together, then of course, what are you going to do? You're going to repeat the same circles. You're going to repeat the same cycles. You're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And lack of tolerance as well. So, yeah. So it goes both ways. But I truly believe in that one, Valencia. You get a lot of these things that you're willing to compromise and tolerate or put up with because you've seen other people put up with this and deal with abuse or deal with the, emotional abuse or, physical abuse because, and still stay together. What you will not put up with. Exactly. Thank you, sister. So, like I said, there were so many different comments. Like I said, I want to thank everyone that contributed to this wonderful conversation. And literally, it was a conversation. People were interacting with each other and chiming in and telling their story, which I hoped made other people feel like they weren't alone in this. Because a lot of times you feel like you're out there on an island. You feel like this is only happening to you. No, it's not just happening just to you. It's happening to everyone else. Someone is being abused in their relationship. Somebody is being verbally abused. Somebody is dealing with lack of communication. Someone is dealing with feeling unwanted or being taken for granted. These things are happening every day in relationships, and so it's always good to have a platform or where people can come and have a conversation, adult conversations, and not be judged about who they are or what they've done, and we can have a civilized talk about it. So I'm always grateful for Speak Your Soul, for the ability to not only to be able to talk to you guys about it and kind of express how I feel about it and literally speak my soul, but also for you guys to be able to speak your soul as well. That's what it's all about. So as we get ready to bring this week's episode down to a close, I hope everyone was able to get something out of this week's poll. I hope to continue to keep doing this for you guys to where we can have these conversations as adults and really share and be vulnerable about things that have happened in our lives and just be honest, because you never know. Your story could be the one story that resonates with somebody else, and then they want to in turn, say what they want to say, and then it just opens you up. And so your story can be therapy to somebody else down the line. So that's what I'm hoping for Speak Your Soul. So once again, for everyone that tunes into Speak Your Soul, we do this every Wednesday at 5 p.m. on Facebook Live. You can also see this on YouTube. So I have a Speak Your Soul page on there. Of course, you can also listen to this on Anchor. So I'm also available for you to listen to my podcast on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Basically on any podcast streaming service. So I'm all over the place, guys. So follow my IG, Snapchat, Twitter. I'm everywhere. Is there a group? I'd love to be in it. If so, Valencia, I'm working on that because so many people want to talk and chat and really have adult conversations about this. So that's more to come. I will be creating a chat so we can really discuss and just really have adult conversation. So, but I do have a Facebook page, Speak Your Soul I do have a page on Facebook. So if you want to join that, if you haven't already, then so be it. Go ahead and join that, and we may use that or create a group chat within that, Valencia, so that we can have something that we can talk about during the week where we can have topics and take these particular conversations that we're having and take them a step further. I would definitely love that. So with that being said, someone told me that it's been a while since I've actually gotten a chance to read a little something for you guys. I do have new material that will be coming out shortly for those who follow Speak Your Soul. I also have a book that I'm working on, Speak Your Soul, a love anthology, which hopefully I will be able to finish by the end of this year. So I'm hoping that I'm able to do that. But in the meantime, I'm going to end this episode of Speak Your Soul with an original piece that I did a while back. So I hope you like it. Step to the edge of the boundaries of love. Admire with leering eyes and a blissful heart, as it possesses boundless abilities to amaze us. Feel the peak of tranquility gather beneath the surface of our soul, so irresistible that the height of pleasure is in your grasp. You're reaching for a cloud to propel you to your place, to where romance is dancing to the beat of endless rhythms, and you'll land softly on a field of dreams. Suddenly you taste bittersweet tears of happiness forming on an island around you, a paradise of joy revealed. There lies what you have created, an orchestra of emotions. All right. So that's going to conclude this week's episode 18 of Speak Your Soul, entitled What You Won't Do for Love. I hope you guys were able to get something out of it. I know that people are still going through these things in relationships. So I just want you to know that you have to really dig down deep and understand what you're willing to tolerate in your relationships. What are you truly willing to do as far as standards and beliefs for love? But in all, I hope you understand it starts with you. It starts with taking care of yourself, self-love, self-care. It all begins with you. So, all right. And on that note, don't forget to speak your soul. All right. Talk to you next week. Bye.